Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror action movie called The Hills Have Eyes 2. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins at a military nuclear testing base in the New Mexico desert, known as Sector 16. A woman is seen being forced to breed mutant children in captivity. She screams in pain as the leader of the inbred mutants, Papa Hades, ruthlessly rips out the baby from her body. But when he realizes that the child is stillborn, he crushes her skull with a rock. I saw this movie when I was a teenager. It changed my life for the worse. The events leading up to this horrific ordeal are soon uncovered. It turns out that about 2 years ago, an American family unknowingly entered the isolated Sector 16. Before long, the men from the family were slaughtered, while the woman was taken hostage for breeding purposes. Following the incident, the government decides to keep a close eye on Sector 16. The US Army, along with a team of scientists, is then dispatched to install an infrared surveillance system. Dr. Wilson establishes a camp at the base to monitor the surveillance readings. He detects unusual movement near the site, but abruptly loses the data feed. Meanwhile, Dr. Hahn is at an old bunker repairing cameras when he discovers the main electrical box has caught fire. Before he can react, something attacks him, and his body is dissected into pieces. Elsewhere, Dr. Foster is working at the top of the hills when he is confronted by a horrifying mutant. He tries to run away, but another mutant appears from behind and brutally finishes him off. The commanding officer, Colonel Redding, hears his desperate screams and climbs the hill to investigate. But before he can find anything, a mutant impales him with a sharp spear and throws him off the cliff.
Hey, who taught these things how to use spears?
Afterward, we are introduced to a group of National Guard soldiers led by Sergeant Jeffrey, also known as Sarge, because Jeffrey doesn't sound cool at all. He is portrayed as a tough and disciplined officer as he berates his inexperienced soldiers after their unsuccessful mission. Sarge then orders his team to be deployed to the deserted base in Sector 16 for their next training. He informs them that their mission is to deliver supplies to the scientists stationed there. However, these soldiers remain unaware of the tragic fate suffered by the previous team. Upon arriving at Sector 16, they find the camp completely abandoned, with no trace of the army or the scientists. They also realize that they cannot communicate outside the base due to its isolated location. Sarge then orders Soldier Crack to locate Colonel Redding, who is responsible for the security at the camp. Crack eventually stumbles upon an old bunker, but finds no one inside. Shortly after, the soldiers receive a call from Colonel Redding on their radio. He urgently requests their help and states that he's somewhere in the hills. The transmission cuts off abruptly, but they soon notice a distress signal on top of the hills. Sarge then decides to launch a rescue operation, and the soldiers prepare their weapons for the same. However, a guy named Napoleon is hesitant, as he believes that they should first contact the headquarters. When he continues to insist, Sarge punishes him by ordering him to guard the camp's portable toilet.
If you want to be such a wiener boy, then you can take care of the piss.
As the team prepares for the mission, Sarge criticizes their combat skills despite being halfway through their training. He singles out Soldier Amber and orders her to stay at the camp. Her task is to keep trying to establish contact with the base using the main radio. Sarge then leads the others on their rescue mission, leaving the two behind at the camp. Along the way, Soldier Mickey suddenly slips and almost falls down a hole in the ground. The team manages to pull him up, but they soon realize that the hole goes much deeper. Sarge then speculates that it leads to an old underground mine and warns everyone to remain alert to their surroundings. They decide to continue with the mission, but Mickey is unable to walk properly as he sprained his foot earlier. Hence, he is ordered to abandon the mission and return back for his own safety. Back at the camp, Napoleon ditches his punishment to use the restroom. While doing his business, a bloodied hand suddenly reaches out through the toilet. Napoleon frantically runs away from there and informs Amber about what he just saw. The latter believes he's joking, but when she notices the frightened look on his face, she realizes that he's serious. The two then head towards the restroom, where they notice a severely mutilated man emerging from the toilet. He turns out to be none other than Dr. Wilson, the scientist who had mysteriously vanished from the camp during the last mission. After escorting him to the camp, Amber asks about the cuts on his body. Dr. Wilson, who is in his last stages, warns them that they are here. The soldiers try to learn more, but he abruptly passes away without giving an answer. Amber is puzzled by his sudden death since the cuts didn't seem too deep, but Napoleon speculates that the unsanitary environment caused severe infection in the open wounds and killed him. Then they try to contact the base again, but the radio still fails to establish a connection. Suddenly, they hear an explosion nearby and rush to investigate. They are shocked to discover that their military jeep has been mysteriously set on fire. Their rifles have also gone missing, as if someone is intentionally preventing them from escaping. Meanwhile, the soldiers on the rescue mission find themselves lost. The similar-looking hills make it especially difficult to find the source of the distress signal. They eventually come to the conclusion that climbing the rocks is their only way up the hills. At the same time, Amber decides to hike up the hill to warn the rest of the team. Napoleon cautions her about the potential danger of going alone, but he's definitely too much of a wiener to go with her. He tries to reach Sarge through the radio, but Amber starts to make her way up the rugged path. She soon begins to hear eerie growls around her and nervously calls out to Napoleon. Suddenly, a disfigured mutant attacks her from behind. He tries to bash her head in, prompting her to struggle for her life. Just when it seems Amber is going to be killed, Mickey arrives there and shoots down the mutant. The creature then crawls into a hidey hole among the rocks. While Amber approaches Mickey, as they're talking, someone suddenly grabs his foot from a nearby hole. Amber desperately tries to free him, and Napoleon quickly joins in to help her as well, but unfortunately, the mutant severs Mickey's leg before violently pulling him into the hole for good. Mickey just became Minnie. Back to the rescue team, they finally managed to reach the top of the hill. However, instead of finding a living, injured person, they discover the lifeless body of Dr. Foster. Sarge instructs Soldier Spitter to contact Amber on the radio, but they fail to reach her. Just then, they receive another distress call, but the transmission cuts off before they can respond. Sarge then asserts that they must rescue whoever is in need and orders the team to continue moving. Along the way, he hears unusual movement, so he directs Crank and Spitter to scout one side of the area while he investigates the other. The two soldiers oblige and they cautiously make their way ahead. Suddenly, a deformed man approaches them from behind and launches an attack. They swiftly fire at the creature, but it dodges every single bullet. Hearing the commotion, Sarge rushes to the scene, but he is accidentally shot by Spitter. The rest of the soldiers try their best to revive him, but it is too late. The bullet wound proves to be fatal, and Sarge passes away on the spot. In the aftermath of this incident, Spitter and Crack are left devastated, as they never intended to harm their leader. Amber and Napoleon also join the rest of the team, and are horrified to witness Sarge lying lifeless on the ground. But they know they can't linger around for much longer, so they carry Sarge's body and continue their journey up the hill. Afterward, the team reaches a point where they have to rig a line to get down the hill. They decide to lower the lifeless body of Sarge first, and Spitter volunteers to accompany him. Napoleon then makes a double bowline for both of them, and the soldiers carefully position the two men. After securing the harness, Spitter slowly begins to make his way down the hill, but just when everything is going well, a mutant suddenly cuts the rope, causing Spitter and Sarge to drop straight onto the rocks below. This devastates the soldiers, as they realize the mutants are picking them off one by one. To make matters worse, their remaining gear is also stolen. This leaves the soldiers with no choice but to walk through the dangerously narrow hills in search of another escape route. After a while, they arrive at a dead end and hear a faint grunt nearby. They cautiously approach the sound and discover a severely wounded person. It turns out to be Colonel Redding, who's barely clinging on to life. Enraged at their current situation, the group demands that he reveal the secrets of Sector 16. Colonel Redding then explains that the army had conducted search and destroy missions in the area years ago, but some mutants managed to avoid being captured by hiding in the mines. This freaks out the soldiers, and they ask about the escape route. The colonel responds that their only option is to take the exit route through the mining caves. However, the mutants will lethally attack any men who attempt to pass, while they capture women for breeding. Colonel Redding then lets out an evil laugh before committing the unthinkable with a fatal gunshot. This means he knew he was going to shoot himself, but he waited a really long time first, just so he could laugh at them. Following this, the soldiers decide to rest for a while before resuming their journey. Amber and another female soldier, Missy, then separate themselves from the men and sit beside the rocks. As they engage in conversation, a mutant slowly sneaks up behind them. However, this turns out to be a trap that they have set. The remaining soldiers appear out of nowhere and fire at the mutant, killing him brutally. They then celebrate their small victory, despite knowing that there are many more mutants lurking around. Shortly after, Missy steps away from the team to pee. She must not have understood what made the earlier plan a good plan. A mutant happens to be hiding among the rocks, and he suddenly snatches her away. The soldiers only see Missy as she's being dragged through a mining cave. At this intense moment, a guy named Stump has a conversation with his fellow soldier, Delmar. He mentions that the two of them can go down the hills without any ropes. He then selfishly asks the rest of the group to hang tight until they bring back help. Delmar reminds them that they must all stay together to survive. However, Stump ignores his advice and decides to escape on his own. He even promises to return with help and dashes off from the cave. The rest of the team eventually stumbles upon a secret hatch that reaches deep into the ground. They decide to take their chances and go down one by one. After landing, they cautiously walk through the underground passage. Meanwhile, Stump nervously scours the area as he walks alone. He climbs down the rocks and comes across a large cave that leads inside the hill. He calls out to his friends, but gets no response. Stump then decides to climb further down the hill and lowers himself onto a rock, but just then, a mutant emerges from the cave and hacks off one of his arms. Poor Stump, who now lives up to his name, is unable to hold on for too long and tragically falls to his death. Elsewhere, the remaining soldiers come across a creek. While walking through, Napoleon notices Amber putting a bullet in her pocket. She candidly states that she's keeping it for herself in case the situation becomes too much to bear. Just then, she almost slips into the creek, but clings tightly to the concrete. Napoleon tries his best to pull her up, but both of them end up falling deeper into the cave. Fearing that their friends will be attacked, Crank and Delmar decide to use a nearby beam to get down to join them. Meanwhile, the mutant takes Missy to his secret lair and tries forcibly to kiss her. She bites his tongue off and kicks him in the crotch before running away. Unfortunately, she doesn't get too far as the giant mutant leader Papa Hades arrives. He then drags Missy onto a table, and the rest I'm gonna skip because this is the part that gave me trauma. In the meantime, another mutant finds Amber and grabs her by the neck. He tries to forcibly kiss her, but Napoleon swiftly smashes his head in with a rock. At this moment, a blind mutant arrives there and picks up on their human scent. He sniffs through the area and comes after the duo as they cautiously move back without making a noise. Amber then discovers a secret hatch nearby, and they quickly get inside. They soon come face to face with another mutant, but instead of attacking, he kindly lets them stay in his lair. Didn't have that on my batshit bingo card. Shortly after, Crank and Delmar arrive near the hatch, but the blind mutant sniffs them out from a distance. He appears to be smarter than the others as he grabs a nearby rifle and begins firing indiscriminately. Crank somehow manages to kill the mutant, but Delmar ends up being shot in the arms. Despite this, they continue walking and eventually reunite with their other friends. Napoleon and Amber then bring them inside the lair, where they encounter the friendly mutant. They initially hesitate to trust him, but Amber reveals that he was the one who saved them. The mutant then leads them through a lair filled with rotting corpses and human body parts. When Crank spots the dead body of Mickey, he becomes furious and tries to attack the mutant, but Delmar stops him in the nick of time. Crank then turns around and discovers his friend bleeding from his mouth. It turns out he was shot not only in the arms, but also in the chest. Delmar then breathes his last and passes away, devastating his friends. In the next scene, the friendly mutant leads them further into the cave towards the exit. Amber doesn't want to escape just yet, as she wants to rescue Missy. Crank tries to make her understand that she is most likely dead, and they should just run away from here. However, Amber and Napoleon remain determined to find Missy, and they set out on their mission. After a while, Crank stumbles upon a box of dynamite. The friendly mutant warns him not to touch it, but Crank disregards his advice and removes the box. This accidentally triggers the dynamite, and the idiot is blown to pieces. Elsewhere, during their search for Missy, Napoleon and Amber kill another violent mutant. They eventually reach Papa Hades' lair and witness their friend being ruthlessly assaulted. In a clever move, Amber records a voice message on Missy's phone and sets it up at a distance to create a distraction. When Papa Hades goes to investigate the noise, the soldiers take the opportunity to free Missy, but he soon returns and violently knocks Napoleon down. He then targets Missy and picks her up before repeatedly slamming her on the ground. Unable to watch her friend suffer, Amber uses her last bullet to shoot Papa Hades right through the head. But even after a part of his brain is blown off, he doesn't budge. He instead storms towards Amber, grabs her by the neck, and chokes her against the wall. Just when it seems he's going to kill her, Napoleon impales him with a spear through his back. This finally takes the beast down, and the trio proceeds to butcher him using various weapons weapons. Napoleon is the one to deliver the final blow as he shoves a rifle in the creature's mouth. Just a few hours ago, he was guarding the toilet, but now he has killed the mightiest beast of the hills. The movie comes to an end as the trio makes their way out of the mine, unaware that they are still being watched by a mutant. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.